Hello, everyone. You gotta turn this all the way down. Hello. Good morning. Welcome on in, guys. Hello, Justice. Hello, Weasel. Hello, Lummox. How is everyone doing? Happy Thursday. How's everyone doing? Hello. Hello, Mario. Hi, Ad. Hello, Mario. Or should I say Jeff? Oh, it's kind of funny. Your little, your sub badge is a little shark ice pop. Little candy pop. Oh yeah, my voice is getting better. I was getting a little bit of a sore throat the other day, and I think it was just like the cold. Definitely not getting sick, thankfully. I was going to be a little peeved if I was getting sick because I don't go anywhere. Yeah, yours is a SpongeBob. I think Justice's is a dinosaur. And then Lummox has a kitty cat. Meow meow. They're like, because over the summer, I decided I was going to just like completely revamp everything on the channel. So I like redid all of the sub badges. And I saw like it's like the little like melty ice pops that like you get in the summer. Most famously, I think of the scene from, I think it's The Simple Life, where Paris Hilton or Nicole Richie is buying one from like an ice cream truck, and they have like the Powerpuff Girls one, they have the Bubbles one, and she's like, "Can I get like 3 more of these little blonde bitches?" It's a deep dive into some myriad how my brain works. Anyway, we're gonna learn Broken Tales today. I'm not sure how many sessions this one is gonna take, just because it is kind of like a thick book. The camera's very low. It is kind of a thick book, but it looks very interesting. I still have not read anything. I've not like kind of delved into it at all. I've only read the back cover. So I'm very excited. It's, from what we've surmised, it's dark fairy tales. How does the cover feel? It's smooth, but it's not super glossy. It's got that kind of satin feel to it. It's not raised. This part is textured. The title is textured, but everything else is very smooth. It's a pretty thick book. Yeah, you can see the Pied Piper, Pinocchio's right here. I think this is perhaps, hey, Alec, thank you so much for that resub. I appreciate you. I think this is like supposed to be like maybe the Beast, because it looks, I think that's perhaps one of the pigs. We see a little, a genie in a lamp. Wolf. Hook. Also an anglerfish. Oh yeah, an anglerfish. I didn't even notice that one. What's up, Glass? How's it going? Another pig. Perhaps a rat of some kind. See some shoes. Thorns, which makes me think of like Sleeping Beauty. Maybe some kind of fairy. Yeah, I very much enjoy this. Definitely thought the genie lamp was Mrs. Potts. It could be. I could be wrong. I could be super wrong. I'm doing pretty good. I hope you're doing well. We're having a nice little table flip. Nice little table flip. The gnome right in the, yeah, the gnome right in the middle. It's like, I don't know, I really love the artwork, which is something that, admittedly, I very much judge a book by its cover, especially with TTRPGs. And if a TTRPG has like really good art, I am like 90% like more likely to buy it. Yeah, we got like a little Pied Piper. There's like a little house too. It looks so it looks so good. So I will read the back because I know not everyone was here last stream when I read it. So, Broken Tales. Once upon a time, a child saved the world of fairy tales. His reward was a wish. The one who plots in the shadows saw an opportunity to tarnish the child's heart, whispering to him a corrupted idea. The child asked the king of fairy tales that the villains, accursed for centuries, be granted a new life. This was to be their chance for redemption. This was how the villains became good. But any light needs a shadow, and in turn, the heroes became evil. At that moment, all fairy tales were shattered. Baby's about to be on some fuck shit. Broken Tales is a tabletop role-playing game of dark stories, reinterpreting fairy tales from an upside-down perspective. Players will become a part of the Order, a secret group operating on behalf of the papacy to investigate supernatural events beyond human comprehension. Moving through an 18th century Europe imbued with mysticism and horror, the main characters of Broken Tales are nothing less than the former antagonists of... We might get a little... Yep, we're getting a little... Nope, do not. Your Whittle Paw. Go away. We had a visitor. We had a little cheeky little visitor. That was Oatmeal. He wanted to make an appearance, in that he wanted to step on my keyboard. Main characters of the Broken Tales are nothing less than the former antagonists of fairy tales, thrown into a new world resulting from the wish of the child savior. In this book, you'll find all the rules you need to play. You'll also find 10 scenarios inspired by classic fairy tales such as Red Riding Hood, The Three Little Pigs, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and other literary works such as The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, 1001 Nights. And I had said previously that I was very much looking forward to looking at the Alice in Wonderland scenario because I love Alice in Wonderland. Oh. Hey, Vlad. You did. He tried to walk across, but the camera is too low and he tried to walk on my keyboard. I'm sure he'll make another appearance. He is nothing if not determined. By we, I mean I took him to the vet today for his little, last checkup before he gets the big snip. So New Year's Eve, all goes right. Oh, Oatmeal's gonna get the big snip. Poor guy. No. He has been, so, I've read this, like, apparently, like, with boy cats, if you don't get them, like, fixed, a lot of the time, sometimes they'll, like, just, like, pee on stuff, and he's just been peeing on, like, blankets, which is really annoying, so we can't, like, leave him alone in the bedroom. And I left, like, a blanket on my couch for, like, a split second to get up to get water, and he peed on it. And so, yeah, he's... If I wasn't already determined to get him fixed, that is the reason we're definitely getting his little nards chopped off. Joel is tired of doing laundry. He wants to be an influencer. Is there a Shahrazada scenario? What's that, Woozle? Right before Happy New Year. No more balls. Anyway. I'm gonna move my mouse a little bit. Hopefully I don't need it for anything. So this is the inside cover. Very beautiful. Again, I really digging it. I might have to adjust the light just because the pages are a little glossy. Which I don't mind. They don't feel bad. But then you can't really see things. Terrible. Has 1,000 tails. Oh. So we have... I'm trying to see if there's like an actual like publisher or anything. Oh, it's World Anvil Publishing. Illustrations are by Daniel Commerci or Commerci. Interesting. Game design and text, Alberto Tronchi. Editing, Natassia Cortesi, Alberto Tronchi, Sean Newton, Tommaso De Benetti, Luca Vainen. Translations, graphic illustrations, layout. So this Daniel Commerci did all of the art and the layout. which is kind of what I was tooting the book's horn for that because I enjoy a good book that's laid out very nicely. I'm definitely misspelling. One moment. Yeah, and it's like it's got this sort of throughout the book. I also really like that the table of contents is written as though it was written by like a child. So there's a little over 272 pages. Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us dragons exist, but because they tell us dragons can be beaten. G.K. Chesterton. And again, the art is so good. The fairy tale of the child savior. Once upon a time, the world of fairy tales was on the verge of ending, forsaken by children who grew up too fast and forgot the value of old stories. Within the void left by failing stories, darkness and oblivion blossomed. All the inhabitants of fairy tales wept with fear at the long-dreaded end. All it would take is one last reader, one single young heart willing to believe in us still, sighed the wary fairy tale king. That, I don't know if you guys ever seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Not Guardians of the Galaxy. It's just the Guardians. Is it just the Guardians? What is it? It's the one with all of like the holiday characters. So you have like the Easter Bunny, Santa. It's just the Guardians. Yeah, so that's kind of the premise for the Guardians, where like all of the Guardians start to lose their powers because children stop believing in them. And there's like the singular child that still believed. That's the one. She's from the 1001 Night Story and from the same land as... Oh, that's cool. Maybe, I would imagine maybe so. Rise of the Guardians. Thank you, Lumix. Hi, Sithy! How are you doing, Sithy? Welcome. The problem with having this... The camera and the mic is I have nowhere to like, I'm like squeezing to get my water. But there was a child who still believed in fairy tales. Alone and abandoned by everyone, the child found shelter in those old stories. Within was the protection from the world outside, too real and too cruel. Lost among myths and tales, he forgot the pain of a family unable to give him the childhood he deserved. I love all fairy tales full of heroes and villains to defeat, said the child. Why doesn't anyone write new fairy tales? If only I knew how, I would do it, the little dreamer kept repeating. The fairy tale king noticed the little dreamer, for if even a single reader was ready to believe in fairy tales, the whole world would continue to do so. Thus the child became the savior. From his dreams, fairy tales drew new life. As a reward, the fairy tale king granted the child savior a wish. Are we being gay? We're always being gay here, Jay. Thanks to you, we are remembered. I trust you will find in your heart the proper reward to ask for. For a long time, the child searched his heart for the most beautiful wish he could think of. However, hidden in his heart's innermost corner, he found his own shadow. The one who plots is the shadows emerged from the future, driven by rejection. Whispering in the child... I got a little confused. I was like, do I go down or do I go across? Whispering in the child savior's mind a malicious intention, the child savior truly believed that it was a good idea. Innocent, he said. I would give new life to the rogues, a chance of redemption for every character who has been relegated to the role of villain for centuries. But every light needs its shadow. So it was that the villains became good, the heroes became evil, and all fairy tales shattered. Again, like... the artwork is just very beautiful. Savior is it's a very heavy title for a kid. And then we get... now we have mostly white pages with the splashes of red. Broken Tales tells dark stories reinterpreting fairy tales from an upside-down perspective. Players will become part of the Order, a secret group operating on behalf of the papacy to investigate supernatural events beyond human comprehension. Moving through an 18th century Europe imbued with mysticism and horror, Main characters of Broken Tales are nothing less than the former antagonists of fairy tales, thrown into a new world resulting from the wish of the child's savior. Broken Tales uses a role-playing rule system called Monad Echo. Monad Echo? Monad Echo? Hi, Quajo! Yark brings the baby of... Yeah, it is very much like the baby of Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline. I definitely agree with that. The system aims to be fast, encouraging storytelling and avoid pauses while playing. All this while allowing players a great degree of freedom. The rulebook is based on the Monad system, a universal role-playing system created by the World Anvil Collective. Monad Echo is not a light version of the Monad system, but rather a totally new system that shares terminology and action resolution mechanics with the original system while focusing on a more narrative and cinematic style. Already, 2 other games feature Monad Echo have been published in Italian: Evolution Pulse Rebirth and Valraven, The Chronicles of Blood and Iron. Glossary of game terminologies. Oh, there's a lot. I have not. Has anyone else heard of the Monad system? I've not heard of that before. Or perhaps I have, and I just like didn't realize that that's what it was called. So, glossary of game terminologies, additional successes, further successes to be added to the base successes obtained by spending soma, rolling dice, or due to the effects of gifts. Agenda, description of an NPC's purpose and goals. Base successes, the number of successes a hunter starts with when facing a position or defense check. Defense check, the game mechanic by which a hunter reacts to the actions of an NPC or a threat managed by the storyteller. Dark presence, NPC related to the world of fairy tales and reborn in their broken version in the world of Broken Tales. Nope, okay, not just me then. Descriptor, a short sentence describing a salient characteristic of a hunter, NPC, or aspect of the world of Broken Tales. Exchange, a short time unit defining the order of actions for each participant in conflict situation. Experience points, abbreviated as XP. It's the numerical value that indicates the experience gained by a hunter during their adventures. Failure indicates that a hunter's actions have failed because of an unsuccessful position or defense check. Gift, a special ability of a hunter, NPC, or threat that activates particular effects in the game. Hunter, a classic fairy tale villain reborn as an agent of the Order. Interlude, a specific moment during a session when hunters catch their breath, spend XP, and recover soma and wounds. Keywords, single-themed words that help players to focus on narrative details in a direct way, stimulating the imagination and helping everyone involved create interesting details on the fly. NPC, acronym for non-player character, all non-protagonist characters, fantastic creatures, dark presences, and in general, any character managed by the storyteller. NPCs are divided into 3 types: main, minor, and dark presences. Opposition level, shortened as OL, it's the difficulty value associated with an NPC or a threat. Outcome indicates a good result in a position or defense check, and can be 3 types, with cost, standard, and with increment. Player, any participant in a session of Broken Tales. One player must take the role of storyteller, often the one who has read this book in full. All the other participants will play a hunter. Position check, the game mechanic by which a hunter tries to succeed at actions they've described in the narrative. Penalty, value to be subtracted from base successes derived from NPC gifts. Scene, the time unit during which a session is played. Scenario, a complete Broken Tales story that reinterprets and breaks a classic fairy tale. Session, a single evening/afternoon of play. Why not morning? Why not a morning of play? You guys don't want to wake up at like 9 in the morning? Also, thanks for that free follow, Weasel. Soma, a value that quantifies the inner strength and ability to tap into the inner energies of a hunter. Spending Soma can grant automatic positive outcomes during checks or activate some gifts. Threat, a generic term for an obstacle or complex situation that has its own descriptor and an OL, which could oppose a hunter. And then wounds represents the ability of a creature, hunter or NPC, to resist any source of adversity, whether physical or mental. Ooh, what this? This is Broken Tales. What's up, Dennis? Broken Tales. It's a flipping fairy tales on their head. Only wake up at 9 in the morning to play a Carry Con. Yeah, the art's fucking crazy for this, man. Like, so good. So good, too good. Watching, oh my god, I started watching that. And I'm so bad with like watching things, but I was really enjoying. I think I got a couple episodes in. I need to get back into it. My nails are very square today. I actually cut down my nails because they were too long, and the more I look at them, the more I hate them. So we're gonna be taking them off soon. I'm not going to read too much into about role-playing games. I'm assuming that if you are someone who's watching my channel, you kind of know what role-playing games are or have participated in a role-playing game or two. The stubboning, it approaches. Shut the fuck up. I see the monad system has an SRD. Oh, does it? I don't know what role-playing games are. Don't lie to me, Weasel. I do like the little house. We got some little dice right here. Reality and fiction, the setting of Broken Tales presents an alternative 18th century strongly inspired by historical Europe. Grafted onto this backdrop are several very different realities and fantasies, such as imaginary kingdoms and supernatural creatures, that strongly differentiate Broken Tales from a specific historical context. This game presents not just another time, but an original world, pervaded by darkness, where you can play your Broken Tales. Storytellers and hunters will be free to sketch details of locations. As a general reference, it may be useful to know that the year 1780 is the starting point of the core book scenario's hypothetical timeline. So I feel like this is one of those games where you can definitely draw on inspiration from like real life events and everything. However, nothing should be considered canon. They just followed. Be nice. Don't side with Weasel. I hate when chat gangs up on me. Game modes. Broken Tales is a modular game and can adapt to the needs of your playgroup. The fastest way to experience the game, useful also for demos and one-shots, is to select one of the ready-made scenarios and pre-generated hunters and start playing right away. Each scenario is designed to be played dynamically. Events will move along in response to the hunter's actions, making each session unique. You won't find a classic pre-written storyline. Storyteller can have fun, moving events and NPCs along, reacting to the hunter's actions and creating an emergent plot. Alternatively, each scenario offers a scene tree structure, allowing the discovery of the scenario's plot through a series of linked scenes in a more classic linear fashion. If you or other players are new to the game, you might want to try that first. Of course, it's also possible to play longer campaigns through a series of linked scenarios. Freely moving along the map, hunters will interact with an interconnected world, deciding at each turning point what to do and which location to explore. In the Broken Ones expansion, sold separately, you'll also find the rules of playing as an ordinary human and a variant for solo play. It's me imaginary. Did this include the maps as well? Or I'm not sure. So in the back... Oh, don't worry. We got Sun Wukong. That's funny. Looks like we got a lot of... These are like the stat blocks, I'm assuming, for the... big bads. I'm not seeing any maps. But just because I'm not seeing them on the flip through doesn't mean that they don't exist. It's also likely that there might be like a link to the maps to download. I've noticed a lot of studios doing that lately. In particular, Free League does that with a lot of their books, where they'll have like the maps and like character sheets and stuff for like pre-gen characters like available for free to download on the website. So I might look into that after stream. I'm gonna have to pick this up. It's like man, just like having it on my shelf, I'm like, man, that's just pretty just sitting there. Rules for hunters. The rules for playing a hunter are presented entirely on the following pages. Same rules can also be found on the player sheet. If you plan to be the storyteller instead, read the dedicated section in this chapter and all of the in-depth rules in the following chapters. What's on the hunter's sheet? Under the hunter's name, a brief history explaining who they are and why they joined the order. Descriptors indicate what the hunter does best and what their flaws are. Incorporating a descriptor into the narration of a hunter's actions allows a position or defense check to start from 3 base successes. Getting in trouble during the narrative, thanks to the descriptor's downside, allows you to check them off and gain XP. Gifts are powerful special abilities that only hunters of the order possess. They can be used whenever the opportunity arises, following the rules and limitations of the gift itself. The Dark Ego represents their essence and bond to the fairy tale world, what the hunter was before their breaking point. You can activate the Dark Ego whenever the activator's condition is triggered, or when the hunter suffers or decides to inflict 1 wound on themselves. That's pretty interesting. Hunters follow their own rules. We're going down first. Ooh, okay. The effect of the Dark Ego persists throughout the course of the scene. The equipment indicates what gear the hunter possesses and can use in order to perform their mission on behalf of the order. The Soma value represents the hunter's inner strength and ability to tap into the true essence of a broken tale. Spending Soma increases the chances of a positive outcome in any position and defense check, or allows the activation of certain gifts. When the storyteller asks for a position or defense check, check if one of the hunter's descriptors can help them in the action being performed. If so, the hunter starts with 3 base successes. If no descriptor is relevant, only 1 base success is obtained. It's possible to obtain additional successes or penalties. To modify the number of base successes, once this is done, the number of successes is compared to the NPC's or threat's opposition level, declared by the storyteller. There are 3 opposition levels, easy 3, medium 5, and hard 7. For an action to have a positive outcome, you must obtain a total number of successes that is at least equal to the opposition level you are facing. Wondering if this is diceless. Is diceless? No dice? Diceless? All of the successes, please. To get additional successes, you need to spend Soma from the Hunter's Reserve to obtain 1 additional success for each point. Decide to roll 1 or more 6-sided dice. You gain 1 additional success for each die rolled. However, if even a single die rolls a 1, the entire check fails. All other results, 2 to 6, counts. That's really interesting. Be good to your voice. I'm trying. I'm trying, guys. Everyone knows I be yapping. So that's really interesting. So that's really interesting because you could basically, so like if you start with just 3 base successes and you know that it's the opposition level is medium, so it's 5. So you automatically get 3 base successes, but you're going to have to, and you don't have any Soma to spend. You don't have any sort of additional things that can help you. You can kind of bet and roll 2 additional dice and hope that you don't get a 1. However, if you get a 1 on one of those dice, it just fails automatically. I kind of like that. I think I like that a lot. How many dice can be rolled? Rolling dice is a gamble. You can roll as many dice as you wish to reach the outcome you desire. However, each additional die rolls increases the chance of rolling a 1, even one of which results in a failure. Even when aiming for the best outcome with an increment, the total number of successes needed will never exceed the opposition level plus 2. Total number of successes needed will not. Okay. Thanks for hanging out, Justice. Have a good night. I'm gonna roll 8 dice. It's all 1s. Critical failure. Count total successes. If it's a draw with the opposition level, you'll get an outcome with a cost. The hunter gets what they want, but at a cost chosen by the storyteller. By scoring 1 point above the opposition level, you'll get a standard outcome. The hunter gets what they want, with obviously no additional cost or anything. By scoring 2 points above the opposition level, you'll get an outcome with an increment. The hunter succeeds better than expected and gains an increment in addition to what they wanted. The storyteller decides on the additional effect, or alternatively, the special increment of one of the hunter's gifts can be activated. In the case of a defense check, the problem is avoided perfectly and an increment is also obtained. If it makes sense, the hunter can also inflict 1 wound. It almost sort of reminds me of, is it Powered by the Apocalypse? Is that what I'm thinking of? I do like, I do appreciate something I have been appreciating in reading through a lot of TTRPGs lately is leveled based success. So like tiered successes. That I very much enjoy that. I enjoy because there's nothing worse. So like I'm just gonna go straight to like a D&D terms. There's nothing worse than like rolling a nat 20 on a check and like, okay, so you searched the library, you got a nat 20 and you found a book that was like relevant to what you were searching for. You found like a couple. So you got like some information. But like if I rolled like a nat 20, like I want something a little zhuzhy. Like I want something good. So I do like that when systems have tiered based successes built in automatically. I just want a little something more. Roll a nat 20. Give me the goods. A wound is inflicted as an effect of a failed defense check or as a cost for an action. Each wound must be described and annotated on the bookmark. The wound narratively affects what the hunter can do and the opposition level of what they face. Whenever you suffer 1 wound, you can activate your dark ego power for the duration of the scene. A player may decide to voluntarily inflict a wound on the hunter to instantly activate their dark ego. When they suffer a 3rd wound, the hunter is out of the game or dead. The storyteller will reveal their fate according to the situation. So we don't want to be wounded, guys. Ideally, no wounds. Woundless. Once upon a time. If during the scenario the hunter gets into trouble and highlights the downside of one of their descriptors, the corresponding box must be marked. During an interlude, each box marked is converted into 1 XP. Declaring an interlude. If hunters need to catch their breath, a player can ask the storyteller for an interlude between scene changes. During the interlude, it is possible to recover 1 wound or alternatively, recover 2 soma. Each hunter can ask a question or another hunter to learn about more about their past. So trouble and highlights. So this is actually interesting because once upon a time gets into trouble and highlights the downside of one of their descriptors. So it's rewarding you for pointing out the flaws in your character, which I really like because that actually like gives you a reason to like not quite min-max your character. I know that we all sort of want our characters to be like these perfect, beautiful, flawless beings. Not me. I love flaws. But I know a lot of the times, especially with like newer players, I feel you kind of tend to fall into like that. I don't want to call it like a power trip playing your first TTRPG, but like a little bit. Like I definitely like power tripped with my first character. It encourages you to look at your character and think about their flaws and adjust accordingly and actually like embrace those flaws because you get an XP for it. And then declaring an interlude. It's interesting. That is, I like when games encourage resource management and not in the terms of like, you have to track down you have to keep track of all of your rations and your water, and you're traveling in the jungle, so you'll need like insect repellent, so you have to make sure you have that. I'm talking more in terms of like things like spell slots and stuff like that, where I feel like with like games like D&D, systems like D&D, it's a little bit easy to just blow all your spells in a single combat, and then okay, I'm just gonna short rest. And then as a warlock, you get all your packs back. Or a wizard, you have like arcane recovery. So it's a little easier to recover those resources that you'll need. Whereas this feels very much like it's going to make you think long and hard about using the resources at your disposal. I get special permission. I know, and I love that weasel. Actually, it's arguably worse when you roll a total of 27 on your watch and see as little as the person who rolled a 4 on the previous watch. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. That sucks. All 2 spell slots back on that breather. Kind of like the play average person that becomes the hero. Yeah, like I like just being like, because like especially like I always fall back into like D&D like terms just because that's kind of like the universal like what most people have played. Like if you're starting as like a level 1 character, you are very much just a normal person who just like started their career in adventuring. And normal people have flaws, and normal people most of the time aren't even aware of their own flaws. So I enjoy characters that are flawed. I enjoyed characters that sort of discover their flaws throughout the story. And maybe not necessarily like overcome them, but at least acknowledge them. During an interlude, XP may be spent to obtain additional effects. Recover 2 soma for each XP spent. Recover 1 wound for each XP spent. Evolve a descriptor into a specialization. For the rest of the scenario, this will grant 1 additional success in each scene in which it is used for the first time. Obtain a scenario gift for the duration of the scenario. Each interlude, however, represents a use of time. Remember that the scenario and the NPCs may continue to act even when the hunters aren't paying attention. Again, I like that. The world keeps turning. Have you seen some level 1 characters' backstories? They've apparently been adventuring for a while. It's like you get presented a character backstory, and it's like, yes, my adventurer is actually a legendary hero, and is known vast and wide by all peoples of the land. And I have to be like, I don't think so. Actually, we're gonna make some adjustments to this little baby. Hello, Joel. Are you home? Where are you? My husband is missing? Rules for the storyteller. Broken Tales is designed to be modular, easy to play role-playing game. For storytellers who already have experience with role-playing games, all the basic rules are presented in this section. In the section Further Details on Game Rules, you will find all of the rules explained with examples to clear up doubts about the system and on how to handle a game of Broken Tales. Be mischievous. I like to think... I don't know that you know how to spell mischievous, so I'm going to believe that that's how you think mischievous is spelled, regardless of whether you actually know how to spell mischievous. Choose how to play the scenario. Unlike other RPGs, Broken Tales doesn't have scenarios with a pre-written plot, but instead cultivates an emergent narrative. What happens in the scene will always be the outcome of the hunter's actions, and this, combined with the storyteller's choices regarding the NPCs, will generate situations with unpredictable outcomes. An emergent narrative means approaching the game with the intention of being surprised by it, reacting on the fly while being guided by the rules of the game and the scenario's information. What flipping they tables? It's me. I'm flipping some tables. What up, Quad? How you doing? As mentioned earlier, a more classical approach is also possible. Each scenario comes with a scene tree that will allow you to explore one of the possible plots in a more linear fashion. I said flashin'. A scene tree may include forks and variations, but it will always give the storyteller clear directions on what clues to bring into play and how to move the plot forward. There is no right or wrong way to play Broken Tales. Each group can decide how to approach it based on their own taste and desire to improvise, or rather, live out a more guided story. So I do like that. I like that you get the options. Like it gives you the option to kind of follow something a little bit more rigid. Especially if like you're not really comfortable in improvising. which a lot of people aren't. I know we kind of, you see, you know, the Matt Mercers and the Brendan Lee Mulligan like DMs, who are obviously very good at improvisation, and I think it's okay to not be like that. Like me myself, I very much love having my plot not concrete per se, but I like having a plot pretty well thought out. And this is with like the addition of like taking into account characters and such like that, because I think that at the end of the day, if you're running a game, you want to run the game for the players and their characters and make sure that they're involved. But I like having things a little bit more well thought out, and it's not necessarily because I don't like or I'm bad at improv. I just have control issues. New to the game to define emergent gameplay. The term gets used a lot, but it's jargon to lots of. Yeah, definitely. I think like if you're come in and you're like, what the fuck is emergent? What do they mean? Doing well, surviving on the good 0 vitamin D, PNW. I fucking feel that, dude. Wake up at like 7 in the morning. It's still pitch black out. It's 5:13 and it's pitch black out. This reminds me of TTRPG I played called Godbound. All of the players made their characters after mythic legends. I played Lancelot. My friend Button played Morgan Le Fay. Ooh! Scold, Bao Shang, and the Man in the Moon. That sounds so fucking cool. I'm gonna have to look that up. I love that. I like I don't know, man. I love fairy tales so much. Making a new game, Claude Bounds. Live your life, dude. Live your truest self. The storyteller's job. The storyteller's job is to manage the game, the scenario, and all the NPCs that the hunters will encounter. Each Broken Tales scenario provides all the information needed to move a plot forward while adapting continuously to the hunter's decisions and the storyteller's personal taste in puppeteering the many side NPCs. After the starting situation, this outline should be followed to run the session. 1. The storyteller asks the hunters where they want to go and what they want to do. 2. The NPC's agendas and scenario events should be consulted frequently. If something has changed and it makes sense in the narrative, the storyteller will have an off-stage NPCs acting or entering the scene. 3. Each new scene must be contextualized by the storyteller with a place, a time, an initial situation, and any further information. 4. After a brief introduction of the scene, it's the hunter's turn to decide what to do. 5. During the scene, if the outcome of an action is uncertain or collides with an NPC/threat, the storyteller should ask for position and defense checks. Once the check is resolved, it's again the hunter's turn to describe what they do. 6. When the hunter's stated goal in the scene is achieved or can no longer be achieved, the scene starts over from step 1. That's pretty straightforward. I mean, that I feel like that's oh my god, Alec, if you could drop please drop it in the TTRPG channel. I think like this is I feel like this is kind of how it's weird to think about like how you GM in like a step-by-step process, but this is basically how I GM in a step-by-step process. You know, you figure out where you want your players to go, like where do they want to go. You you come up with NPCs and everything for the area they're going to. You describe the area, and then you let your PCs figure out what they want to do in said area. And then if there are checks that need to be made, the checks are made. They hopefully achieve what they wanted to do in said area. And then you go, okay, so where do you want to go next? And that's it. NPCs agendas. To manage the game flow, each scenario presents a series of agendas, goals that the scenario's NPCs try to accomplish. An agenda can progress in 2 ways. When it makes sense for it to happen in the narrative, or during an interlude, because time continues to pass while the hunters rest. The agenda is the most important reference for the storyteller when deciding how to handle the events of a scenario. It describes what the specific NPC wants regardless of the hunter's actions. Consulting NPC agendas can lead to spontaneous situations without having to plan scenes in advance. Scenario events. Events are brief descriptions of something that will happen if certain conditions are met. They're sudden twists in the scenario, shaking things up for the hunters. When the conditions described in the event occur, the storytellers should include it in the scenario as soon as possible. Scenes and interludes. Each scenario is developed through scenes, which are roughly comparable to scenes in a movie. It is usually clear when one ends and a new begins. Each scene must have a place, a time, an initial situation, and possibly some information the storyteller can use as a starting point. It's the storyteller's job to manage scenes and decide when to move on to the next one. Interludes are special scenes that hunters can ask for between action to catch their breath. Interludes are calm, restful, such as dinner at the inn, and always take time. In addition to recovering soma and wounds as indicated on the player's sheet, an interlude has 2 additional effects of the scenario. Hunters can ask another hunter a question about their past. This is a good way to reveal something and dig deeper into each backstory. Players are free to invent whatever they want to characterize their hunter, but their answer should remain relevant to the question they have been asked. Time doesn't stop during an interlude, and the storyteller must consider how to advance scenarios' agendas. They must point out to the hunters that the scenario goes on without them. Asking for too many interludes can lead to other things getting out of control. Aw, thanks, Insomnia. I appreciate that. Appreciate you. I've been having a lot of fun doing these. Thank you, Alec. You are a gentleman and a scholar. I was thinking about it as I was like getting ready today for stream, and I was like, man, I really love doing these just because it's like forcing me to learn new systems that like otherwise the books would just be like sitting on my shelf collecting fucking dust. And I get to share them with you guys as well, which is nice because we can like talk out the mechanics and like our own thoughts on what we think of the book. Yeah, so again, I like that this system very much is telling the player you can use interludes, you can have your rests. However, bad things are very likely to happen if you over abuse that feature. Because man, like I've been a part of tables where like, and I know Joel has told me this as well, being a part of tables, especially in like D&D, where you have like the spellcasters who after every combat they're like, can I have a short rest? Can we have a short rest? Can we have a long rest? And it's like, no, you can't. You cannot. Your actions have consequences. Handling the position checks. When a hunter performs any kind of action, the storyteller needs to decide if they want to ask for a check. In making this decision, it's vital to keep all relevant descriptors in mind. If the hunter acts to obtain something but might fail due to an NPC or a threat. Hey, thanks so much for those biddies. If the hunter acts to obtain something but might fail due to an NPC or a threat, then it's time for a position check. This applies to any action in which the hunter is the active party. Ideally, the hunter would narrate a detailed, dynamic action, such as, I run up the wall and leap off, cutting with my sword at the giant's head. Not every action requires a check, just those that face opposition that could prevent the hunter from succeeding. Again, I think that's very important. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of stuck between two worlds because I love rolling dice. But also I'm like, not everything needs a check for it. Like I shouldn't, like, even as I've been DMing, I've asked my players for checks for things, and then I look back on it and I'm like, why did I ask them for a check for that? Like they that's so easy, and it was more just like a waste of time. Only 2 short rests and 1 long rest in a day. True. Gotta start. I have to start applying that to everything. Only 2 short rests and 1 long rest in a day. Download the quick start for it. Hell yeah. Yeah, I think that like I myself as a DM have definitely been like guilty of just calling for checks that didn't need to happen. Oh, Lumix, thank you so much for the biddies. Thank you so much. I don't know if the alert audio is coming through. I have to update my bot. And I'm glad that like I feel like more systems now are also now like implementing that into the mechanics of if there is a chance for them to fail, that is when you ask for a check. Not, hey, I opened the door and it's like, well, roll a dexterity. I'm trying to not ask for checks unless it's a fail. Yeah, that's true too, unless a fail is interesting as well. That's also very true. I like that as well. The fail is interesting. Something interesting happens. If the storyteller's narration includes circumstances that may injure or inconvenience the hunter, call a defense check instead. This applies to any reaction in which the hunter is a passive party. For example, you're jumping from roof to roof, but the rain made the tiles slippery. Do a defense check against OL medium 5. All defense checks represent a hunter's reactions, attempts to avoid a potential problem. A defense check is used when the storyteller is the one taking the floor, presenting a threat or an NPC as an obstacle the hunters must overcome. The storyteller never rolls dice. Instead, they ask for position checks when hunter acts. The storyteller also asks for defense checks when scenario NPCs and threats attempt to oppose the hunters. Not every hunter will find the same situation challenging, so the storyteller may only ask some hunters to perform a specific check, remembering to keep in mind the descriptors of each hunter, NPC, or threat involved. I like that. I like that, again, we're just gonna keep referencing back to like D&D terms. If like you're running, like if you're running on like a roof, yeah, I probably would ask like the warlock and the other spellcasters perhaps for a dexterity check to make sure they keep their balance. But maybe I shouldn't ask the monk for that because that's kind of their whole gig, you know? Like that's what they do. Sounds like Numenera with the checks. Yeah, I've not read Numenera. If the scene evolves into a conflict, you must keep tabs on who has acted and who hasn't until all participants in the session have had a chance to do something. This rotation system is called exchange. I like that as well. I like not having a specific initiative order. I could see that sort of maybe being a little bit of a problem when it comes to... Oh my god, thank you so much. Thanks, Lumix. Thanks for giving that gift sub to Dennis. I could see that maybe being a little bit of a problem with like perhaps players that are a little shy and don't want to kind of like speak up to say what they do. But that is also something that could just be sort of a situation that can be like relieved by just like getting to know each other and getting more comfortable at the table. It's Christmas time. Oh, thank you. It is Christmas time. In Numenera, the GM makes no checks. It is all on the players. Oh. There's another system like that. What's the next? There's like... oh, Kids on Bikes. Kids on Bikes, the GM doesn't make any sort of checks. It's all player rolls. Shy player. I just stand there quietly and awkward. That's just me in real life. That's just me as a person. But yeah, I do like not having like specific initiative order. Because man, sometimes the initiative order just fucks you. Like you were set, like everyone was set up for you to do this really specific thing, and then someone else went and it just screwed up your whole plan, and now it's your turn and you're panicking because the idea you had is going out the window. Come on, I'm trying to think of systems where the GM doesn't make checks, and I'm in chat. Oh my god, Sega's as well. Which like I like the thing I love about Sega's is like you it's very much hands-off GMing, which is like not a bad thing. I love the fact that so much just is just in the player's hands. Because it takes a lot of pressure off you where you're just like, hey, I'm chilling. I'm just waiting for them to do shit. Depending on the outcome of the position and defense checks, a cost or increment may be generated. The storyteller will decide its nature. A cost is some kind of narrative disadvantage, such as employing more time to perform the action or consuming a useful resource to do it. Possible costs are you retrace your steps or move away from a potential goal you intended to achieve, or you hesitate, avoid danger, but can't get past what you're trying to overcome. You get wounded or waste a lot of energy, suffering one wound. You lose, break, or drop something, or waste more resources than expected. Your opponent can easily move away from you, and you can't do things to prevent it, etc. Thank you guys so much for that little cheeky little hype train. And oh my god, Lumix, thank you so much for gifting that sub to Vlad. Crazy. I would figure a group who had been together for a while would have a procedure for how combat, etc. proceeds. That's true. I haven't, like, I would say more in terms of, like, perhaps if, like if I was putting together a table for this with, like, people who, like, didn't really, like, super know each other or weren't, like, hadn't played at a table with each other before, I could definitely see it being like, do I go? Are you going? Do I go? Do you want to go? Goodbye, Weasel. Enjoy your thank you. Have fun recording. See you for the dying Sunday. I feel like there's no, I don't need to give context there. Alternatively, or if no ideas spring to mind, you may assign one penalty to the hunter's next action or inflict one wound. So if a cost doesn't quite fit into a penalty that might come from the hunter making the check but not exceeding it, you can instead place, like, essentially a disadvantage on a roll on the next action, or inflict one wound. An increment is some kind of narrative advantage, such as spending less time performing the action or getting into a better position during an attack. Possible increments are you can maneuver around your target, stay engaged with it, and move in a direction of your choosing, or you can easily move away from a threat without impediments. You can catch something on the fly. If an enemy is moving, you can force them to stop by blocking their path. You can provide one additional success to your next action, or that of your ally, to be spent in the immediate future. You get the best of the negotiation, impress or fascinate someone, or are otherwise memorable, etc. As an alternative, if no ideas spring to mind, you may assign one additional success to your next action or that of an allied hunter. So basically, a cost is like a disadvantage that you would have, while an increment is an advantage that you would have. The opposition level of opponents and threats. Any element of the scenario can be an NPC or a threat, a natural element, a magical effect, or anything other than an NPC. Both are always characterized by a descriptor and an opposition level, and in some cases by one or more gifts. NPCs are also divided by category, which indicates their importance in the game. The descriptor is a short narrative quote describing the NPC or threat. It is used to handle the narrative and to modify the opposition level by +1 if the hunter is taken by surprise or has no means to oppose what the descriptor says. If the hunter uses it to their advantage, it will lower the opposition level by 1. The opposition level, OL, is the numerical value to be achieved or surpassed in a position or defense check. Easy is 3, medium is 5, hard is 7. Gifts or special effects and powers. Each scenario will feature those specific to relevant NPCs and threats. The category indicates the importance of an NPC in narration and a sensible range of wounds they can suffer. A minor NPC can suffer wounds from 1 to 3, a main NPC wound from 1 to 6 wounds, and a dark presence from 1 to 6 wounds. Ooh. Ooh, that art. Ooh, that art. That's that good, dude. Also, do you guys like that I my stage is read. Match the book. My production value is just top notch. Don't mind the sound foam that is missing on my wall. Goes so hard. Managing information. Broken Tales scenarios will often be investigations that hunters perform on behalf of the Order. With that in mind, it does not make sense to ask for position checks to find clues that, if undiscovered, would stall the situation. We've talked about this before. I've definitely talked about this before on the channel. If there's information that is so important that your characters, your players need to find in order to progress the story, do not hide that information behind a check. Don't do it. In general, when a hunter is looking for information, ask yourself, does one of the hunter's descriptors justify the knowledge of the information? If so, the hunter will get it. Does it take time to get the information? The storyteller communicates the drawback to the hunter, who will decide what to do. Is getting the information dangerous for the hunter? The storyteller introduces an NPC/threat into the scene. Does the hunter need external help to get the information? The storyteller will reveal who can provide it. This can often lead to a new scene. This is all you need to get started with the game, and the further details on the game's rules, chapter on page 17, you will find several examples for each mechanic presented. I think we might go through a couple of the examples. I feel like examples always like clear up questions that you might have, or a puzzle, because those things, yeah, that frustrates me so much when you have like like information that is absolutely like necessary to progress the storyline, and like I've been the player in that situation where like the GM was just like, oh well, and then you're just like sitting there like, okay, what do I do now? Like, what do we do now? Because we can't do anything because there's no lead for us to follow, or there's no next action that was immediately that was readily available for us to pursue. So I guess we just sit here. Let's go murder hobo. When in doubt, kill every citizen available. So the conversation, a game of Broken Tales, is structured as a conversation between all of the players, in which the storyteller presents fictional situations and the other players react with their hunter's choices. When the consequences of a hunter's choice are uncertain, the storyteller asks for a position check to determine the outcome. At this point, the hunter's action either succeeds or fails, and the conversation resumes. The storyteller narrates the action's results together with the hunter's player. Play continues until the next check, and so on throughout the session. The storyteller never performs checks on behalf of NPCs and threats. Ooh, a little table. Nice. When a setting/environmental element acts directly against one or more hunters, the storyteller may request a special position check called a defense check. As with the normal position check, the hunter will always be confronted with the opposition level declared by the storyteller. This time, however, the player will, with the help of the storyteller, narrate the outcome. Once the check is resolved, the narration resumes as normal. So, check type. Position check. When is it done? The hunter is actively trying to position themselves in a certain way within the story, and the outcome is uncertain. What are the check criteria? Yeah, that says criteria. The storyteller requests the check based on the hunter's narrative and what they're trying to achieve. Who narrates the outcome? The storyteller describes the outcome. What are the mechanical consequences? The actions continue with one of three possible positive outcomes or failure. The hunter experiences the consequences of the action. Defense checks. When is it done? The hunter is the target of an action by someone or something, NPC or threat, attempting to obstruct them. Hello?
I know how to spell.
Do you? Are you sure you know how to spell mischievous? Yeah, M. Yeah. What's the next letter?
Isn't it obvious?
I don't think that Joel knows how to spell the word mischievous. Don't. Sithy, you didn't even spell it right. Oh, baby. Even if some of the info is behind a check or something like that, don't make it the only way to think. Yeah, also that. Don't make it the only way. The information tied directly to a character arc should never be. Yep. Thank you, Vlad. There you go, buddy. There you go, Sithy. She got her Lanny. I had some. Probably. I had to Google it. Oh, buddy. For defense checks, what are the check criteria? The storyteller requests the check based on the actions or triggers of an NPC or threat. Who narrates the outcome? The hunter narrates the outcome. What are the mechanical consequences? The hunter suffers any effects and play continues. The hunter cannot achieve anything that is not related to avoiding danger. Making decisions while narrating, the game flow is simple and fast. It is interrupted only for position and defense checks. With this in mind, it is very important to have a clear idea of who can determine what and the duties of the hunters and the storyteller in the story. How and when does a hunter act? How much can they risk in terms of resources and consequences in the narrative? This is the domain of the players. The storyteller cannot impose actions or make decisions for a hunter. How dangerous is an action and when is a position and defense check required? Making this decision is up to the storyteller. A hunter may try to steer the narrative towards one of their descriptors to improve their chances of obtaining 3 base successes. However, it will always be the storyteller who decides whether or not to call for a check. Only the storyteller knows the descriptors and other details of NPCs and threats, and they're the only one at the table who always knows everything that is happening. Omniscient. Hey, Insomnia, thank you so much. Thanks. I think that's, again, I've played at tables where people will just like roll. They'll just roll without like the DM prompting them. When it's most likely not necessary, or like they're rolling for the wrong thing. It's just like, I'm gonna check the room, perception check, and it's like, you're in a square room with nothing else in there, so I don't really think you needed a perception check for that. Anyway, wait until your storyteller tells you when to roll. Which scenario develops affects the way the hunters behave? What will trigger XP accumulation thanks to a descriptor's downside? Players have authority in these situations. Each of them has descriptors on their sheet and can decide when to create a problem for themselves, putting the downside in the spotlight. Doing so will allow them to check off the descriptor, which will later translate to XP. This is like almost exactly like I feel like now Rad does his roll to see what his character would do. That's I also like that, like when you're like, oh, I don't know what my character would do, let me roll for it. This is something I'm not sure if it's like all powered by the apocalypse, but specifically Brindlewood Bay. You have there are like, I can't remember like what it is, like it's not necessarily flaws, it's just features of your character. I think like one of them is like basically saying fuck you to authority as an old woman, an older lady. And so if during that session you had said like fuck you to authority, you get to place a check. And then once you've accumulated all of the, I think it's like 2 or 3, once you've accumulated those 3 bases, like you get an XP point. So it's like, yeah, my character said fuck you to authority, not in those words, but my character said fuck you to authority, and they also showed like a youngin what they were all about. And so I did both of those things in a session, therefore I would be able to get an XP point to be used to get like another feature for my character. My first rule of being a player: read the rules and know what your character can do. I do that every day as an old man. Every day. Roll for sandwich. The basic mechanics. So we kind of went over position checks. I don't think that those really need to be explained further. Position checks are when you're on the basically offensive. Defense checks are when you're on like the defenses. So when you're actively doing something versus when you're passively reacting. Oh, I've watched Roll for Sandwich. So that guy's really brave, is all I'll say. So brave. I think this should just become your own dice roll bot. Once the situation is cleared and defined, we move on to the resolution sequence. The storyteller identifies whether to determine the positive outcome or failure of an action during the game, declares the basic opposition level of the threat/NPC, determines whether to raise or lower the opposition level by 1 according to the current narrative and hunter's behavior in relation to what is happening. For a check to have a positive outcome, a hunter has to accrue a total of successes equal or greater to the opposition level declared by the storyteller. The hunter checks if one of their descriptors is relevant to the declared action and confirms it with the storyteller. If so, they start with 3 base successes, otherwise they only have 1. Adds up any additional successes and subtracts any penalties. Each penalty removes 1 success. Decides what kind of outcome to aim for depending on what compromises they are willing to make and the expected results of the action. Matching the opposition level with a success leads to an outcome with a cost. Exceeding it by 1 is a standard outcome, and exceeding it by 2 is an outcome with an increment. It is never possible to aim for a higher result than an outcome with an increment. May decide to spend Soma from their supply to get 1 additional success per point spent. Can roll as many dice as they want all at once, getting 1 additional success for each result between 2 and 6. And again, if you get 1 on the die, that is an automatic failure. It does not matter how many 6s you get. If you get 1 on even 1 of the dice, failure. So it's a gamble. I had something to say about something and then I forgot. I do like, oh, this is what I was going to say. I like that the decides what kind of outcome to aim for. So a lot of the times when we're sort of describing, like, as a player, what we're doing, we're kind of going through the motions and describing what our character is actively doing instead of describing what our actual end goal is. And I feel like I as a GM, I have asked my players this, so I'm like, I usually go, so what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Because I feel like saying what you're trying to accomplish first and then saying how you are going to accomplish it helps a lot more to sort of see what kind of narrative we're trying to get towards, rather than just saying, yeah, I'm gonna scale this wall to try and grab onto the window. And it's like, well, why are you trying to grab on? Are you trying to get into the building? Are you trying to make it to the roof? Like, what is the goal here? And then this just goes through sort of the check examples. I don't think I'm going to read these. I think that these are pretty, it's pretty explanatory, at least for me. I don't care about you, chat. I don't care if it's explanatory or not for you. And then we see the defense checks. I don't want to spend hours going all over all of it. Everything starts from the narration. Everything goes back to the narration. The most important questions to keep in mind during the game is what is happening in this scene. Broken Tales starts with the narrative premise that each player describes what their hunter does while the storyteller responds through NPCs and situations. There are no subsystems. When an action can have an interesting or uncertain outcome, you make a check. Take into account what was narrated before asking for the check. What is happening in the scene will lead to a whole series of considerations. What prompted the check? Are we narrating a violent action towards someone or a stealth maneuver to sneak away unseen? How do you manage the check? Does the hunter bring into play a relevant descriptor? Does the NPC or threat involved bring a descriptor into play as well? What's the result? How does the hunter's narrative position change after the check? The result is the most important part because it will always cause some change to the ongoing scene. When many subjects are involved in a scene, it is good to establish turns dynamically. When hunters are alone or in situations where they have full control and time to plan their moves, they can freely decide how and when to act. On the other hand, if there's a conflict situation involving NPCs, the storyteller must always divide characters into 2 factions. After determining the first to act, each faction will then make each of its members act in turn until all of the hunters and prominent NPCs have acted at least once. The system is called Exchange, and it establishes a narrative order. It is used by the storyteller to keep the spotlight equally divided between the parties, but does not have to follow all of the contenders in the same way. What matters during an exchange is that the hunters and prominent NPCs have time to act and turn the tide in their favor. while everything else remains active, but in the background. Yeah, I think I like that. I like not having like an established initiative order. I know that's I feel like that's probably not a popular opinion. But I think that being able to sort of dynamically change up who is acting, like which one of your party members gets to act at what point in the turn, gives you a lot more control. And in a system that is very narrative based, you do definitely want to have control. Hi, Cookie. How are you doing, Cookie? Oop. After position or defense checks, the narration always continues. After a check, the situation must evolve in some way for better or worse. This is a fundamental step. A position check always moves the situation forward far enough, even if by just a few moments, to ensure that the previous state is changed. This applies both to any type of positive outcome as well as to a failure. Failing can mean many things. Sometimes you can get what you want and still fail. The player narrates how. A position check to push someone off of a cliff can be resolved in many ways. One of them being that the target is pushed, but that takes the hunter down with them. Just last minute shopping. Oh my god, Joel and I have to go to like the store this weekend and I'm dreading it. Yeah, I'm dreading it. That's what we get for being last minute. Hunter versus Hunter. Broken Tale assumes that a conflict between hunters should be resolved mainly between players, with a spoken mediation between intent and outcome. However, it could happen that one hunter acts to harm another, generating either a position or defense check. In this case, the storyteller determines who is acting, the active hunter, and who is at the receiving end of the action, the passive hunter. The active hunter will then have to make a check against an opposition level of either easy 3 if the passive hunter has no relevant descriptors, or medium 5 if the passive hunter has a relevant descriptor. The passive hunter cannot spend soma to increase their opposition level. Dang. They really said PvP? That's fine. Dividing storyteller duties. Broken Tales put all of the choices into the storyteller's hands, who then decides the cost, increments, and if wounds are inflicted. This is intended to avoid interruptions in the game flow and avoid delays due to indecision, which can be a frequent problem in some other games. Once you're familiar with the rules, feel free to divide the duties of narrating outcomes, costs, gifts, choices, and descriptors, uses between storyteller and hunters to match your playstyle. That's nice. I like that they they give it the, hey, if like there's one person at the table who's like super good at improv, you can kind of toss the like costs and increments over to them, like the outcomes over to them, to kind of make them be like, yeah, you got this, right? I don't mind that. I think that's a fun little thing. Gifts. Gifts are special skills and abilities that give hunters and NPCs depth. Every gift has a full description of its effects, which clarifies when and why it can be used in the game. As with descriptors, hunters and NPCs use gifts in different ways. On the hunter side, gifts influence different game situations, from obtaining circumstantial bonuses to recovering soma. Generally speaking, NPCs and threats have gifts that have simpler effects than the hunters. On page 29, 32, and 73, you'll find all of the expanded rules to create gifts and threats. Gifts for threats, NPCs, and hunters. Gifts are by far the most design-heavy element to create for storytellers and players, as they must be balanced following an often subjective evaluation. The golden rule when creating a gift is to start by describing what happens in the narrative when the gift is used. This means setting aside bonuses and game effects so that you can prioritize a narrative description over the mechanics. It is good to be exhaustive, describing how the gift is activated, if it requires special precautions, and what happens when the owner shows it off. On page 73, you'll find a series of archetypal effects and costs for the hunter's gifts, which, when combined, will allow you to build a full-fledged gift. Ask yourself, if you had to describe in simple words what a gift does and when it can be used, how would you describe it? Which of the mechanics available on pages 75 or 85 best suit what you described? Always ask yourself these questions in this order. Having a clear understanding of what happens is the narrative key. In the narrative is key to deciding the effects and costs to apply. In Broken Tales, hunters and their opponents are often exceptional people. There's nothing wrong with giving them gifts that grant incredible abilities. The only real way to create a balanced gift is to remain consistent with the backstory of the hunter/NPC. I do like that. Yeah, you guys are, because you're literally fairy tale villains turned good guys. Yeah, you're pretty cool. You're pretty dope. Also, here's my question for the stream. If you could play a villain turned good guy from a fairy tale, which villain turned good guy would it be? Which villain would you want to play? I think I would want to play Queen of Hearts. Red Queen. Oh my god, I heard that. Oh my god. Thanks. I don't know many villains. No? Sometimes you don't know. Wake up. Wake up. Equipment and possessions, weapons and armor. Weapons and armor have no damage modifiers or protection value. This does not make them less effective. The true value of a good weapon is represented by the narrative opportunities that it will give to its owner. In game terms, this means the storyteller will evaluate the usefulness of the chosen equipment every time they call for a check. Whenever it's possible, it is important to detail an NPC's weaponry in its descriptor. A good alternative is to focus on the fighting technique, allowing that the player decide what equipment is appropriate. Consider the following. A pack of hungry wolves will be at its strongest when exploiting their numerical superiority, while it will be less effective in the absence of the alpha wolf. A skilled swordsman will be a relentless foe in single combat, but be at a disadvantage if thrown into the chaos of a large-scale confrontation. Interesting. Maybe Loki. Ooh. I do love Loki. Loki's like one of my favorite gods in Norse mythology. Wealth and possessions. In the broken Europe of the 18th century, trade is highly developed, but most hunters show no interest in worldly riches. The Broken Tales system does not assign a precise value to every piece of equipment, and for this reason, there is no real need to keep track of treasures or anything else, if not for the weight they can have on the narrative level. When a hunter is preparing to obtain or seek some material goods, the storyteller must consider two elements. Are there any hunter descriptors that justify the specific possession or that give the hunter the possibility to obtain it? And is the object of the search easy to find, or is it a rare and precious commodity? In the first case, they get it. In the second case, the storyteller will reveal information on how to obtain it in the story. The hunter will then have to actively work to get their hands on it. I like that. And you know as well. He's not switching back to villain. I like, so there's I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals recently. And I've been like, when I'm able to choose a duelist, I've been choosing Scarlet Witch, and there's a mechanic in the game where certain characters team up so they get like extra abilities when one or more of like their team up partners are on the team with them, and one of Scarlet Witch's is Magneto, because that's her dad. Threats. The term threats refers to features of the game world, such as special places, natural threats, and all of those situations in which the hunter can be in danger but are not directly facing an NPC. A drawbridge of a haunted castle or the illusion of a mighty witch are both excellent examples of a threat. To create a threat, the storyteller must establish 3 points. Create a descriptor that indicates the characteristics of that threat, establish the threat opposition level, and optional, give the threat a gift to represent a special ability. Is Quicksilver in the game? Not yet. I feel like they might add him. I think that there are some leaks for a couple of the heroes that they're going to add. I think that they're adding... Are they adding Mr. Fantastic? I think that they are going to add Silver Surfer, maybe? They're adding Blade. I think they're also. I feel like they're also adding Doctor Doom, because I think that the first season is like Doctor Doom themed. Maybe I could be lying to you. Generic gifts. The The lists of gifts represent generic features adaptable to every type of threat. Adverse, the threat consumes the power of those who approach. A hunter loses 1 soma at the start of each scene, while an NPC lowers their opposition level by 1 on the first action taken. Block, the threat accumulates tokens of a certain type in relation to the actions of the hunter or the passing time. Once you have reached a predetermined number of tokens, activate a special event listed in the gift's description. This is a good way to give importance to the passage of time or the accumulation of resources and information during exploration. Doctor Doom is the shit. Well, I think aren't they like doing a Doctor Doom movie as well? I've like not been keeping up with like new Marvel stuff either. Create the effect. When the threat activates, it creates a descriptor representing how the situation is affected and changed by the threat. Damage. When the threat is triggered, it inflicts 1 wound of a sort linked to the type of threat. This wound is in addition to any wound inflicted on the hunter because of a failed check. Disturbance. Proximity of the threat weakens a certain ability, such as magic in a holy place. Anyone near the threat receives a 1 penalty when using abilities that are affected by the threat's power. Fulcrum. Proximity of the threat enhances a certain ability, such as magic in a place charged with arcane energy. Anyone near the threat receives 1 additional success when using the abilities affected by the threat's power. Avengers Doomsday. Aren't they bringing back like a bunch of people? Like I think like Robert Downey Jr. is coming back for that. I think Chris Evans is also coming back. Their careers must be slowing down. So I'm pretty sure like all of them were like, yeah, we're never doing another Marvel movie. Now we have NPCs. NPC gifts, so it gives you some NPC gifts. Agenda. RDJ is playing. Oh, he is. Okay. Storyteller's role. This seems how the storyteller acts during a session. The game is a conversation where the storyteller presents various situations and the players deal with them by narrating how their hunters act. For a player, storytelling duties are all related to their hunter and to some information about their past. For the storyteller, however, the spectrum of agency is much broader. But how, then, does the storyteller act during a session? Giving life to Broken Europe. Broken Tales setting is a version of 18th century Europe where rural landscapes are still predominant. The hunters often travel to small villages and abandoned places where the Broken Tales can find fertile ground in which to act away from the gaze of ordinary people. The Broken Tales' existence is an anomaly. At the same time, they need to contact with people in reality to pursue their goals. This duality will inevitably create conflicts and problems. It is up to the storyteller to bring out all of these elements which form the basis of events of Broken Tales' story in play. Key principles of the settings are: the world of Broken Tales, Broken Europe, is a massive fairy tale that encompasses all other fairy tales within it. The stories the hunters live out will almost always take place in a rural setting. So those are like basically the 2 things to live by. The entire, like, all fairy tales exist within a massive fairy tale world. So everything's sort of interconnected, and then the story itself, the stories the hunters live out, so the scenarios are always going to take place in like a rural area. By choosing or creating scenario, the hunters are part of the order and intervene when there is a cry for help against the darkness. The storyteller decides which scenario to present from those found in the book or create ones from scratch. In the case of a campaign, the storyteller can manage everything as explained on page 243. By shaping the initial situations of each scene, this is a great power. The storyteller decides how a scene begins and who will be there. They describe places and situations, and only when the scene is clearly understood by everyone will they leave the stage to the hunters. After the first scene, it will be easier to set up the following ones, because in most cases it will be the hunters who will specify a new objective. Again, you present a scene to your players. They tell you, well, your players tell you what they want to do. You present that scene to your players, and then you let them act. And then once that scene has been resolved, then you allow... What? No, she's not.
Already done.
I'll let her get off. Stop it. You buy a Haktua coin or whatever. Some noose is broken in the household.
Here's a quote.
Get away.
The quote. Kill the secret URL.
Oh boy. Joel's mom apparently has just gotten into crypto. Oh, what are you doing? Oh no, oh no indeed. By managing information, the storyteller knows many secrets and will often see all of the mysteries of the scenario clearly from the beginning. Their task is to disclose information according to the questions and actions of the hunters. Since the storyteller's goal is for the hunters to advance from scene to scene towards the conclusion of the scenario, they should never deny information, as explains on page 16. This does not mean helping the hunters or offering NPCs with ready-made solutions. Hunters must always be the center of the scene, while NPCs must act in response to their actions, with information acting as the glue between the two. Hey, Laura Tutu, thanks for the follow. I think that it is very important. That's a very important and key thing, I believe, for a lot of RPGs, a lot of TTRPGs. It is important that you, as the storyteller, never put an NPC's importance before your player's importance, your player character's importance. I feel like I have been in a lot of games, and perhaps even maybe even put a game or two, or like run a game or two, where I've made like an NPC, or there's been an NPC that seems to have all the answers, seems to be very key in the narration of the game, and it detracts away from your players and their characters. And I think it's always important that you're trying to highlight the PCs, and you're trying to make sure that they have their moments to shine. And I think having an NPC that is, especially with an NPC that is almost like a foil to your character, one of the PCs, it can very much demotivate your players. I feel like I've definitely been in like situations like at a table where like my character was a spellcaster, and it was like, you know, that was like their shtick. Like they were the spellcaster, they were the healer, and then an NPC gets introduced who like travels with the party for a bit, and they're also a spellcaster and they also heal, and maybe they do it a little bit better than my character did, and it feels like my purpose in the party is like taken away. That's never a fun feeling. That's not a fun feeling to have. Yeah, the players are the hero of the story. Made about a 600 off of crypto recently. Apparently she's already down 160. So mom and crypto in the same sentence is so fucking scary. Apparently she told Joel that she knows the secret code to put in the URL. So don't worry guys, we'll be in the millions soon. Considering when to call a check, the last important responsibility of the storyteller is to manage the transition from narrative to resolution through position and defense checks. As explained in the rules, the storyteller must always be certain of a hunter's intent when evaluating whether to request a position check. Broken Tales allows you to act on the granularity of events, zooming in on a particularly important scene and splitting it into multiple close-up shots, or keep up a wide shot to solve a macro situation in one go. The most striking example of a granularity can be found during fight scenes. All of the parties involved will act to harm the opponents on multiple actions, and most likely failure will have painful consequences. In a conflict, the hunters will describe action after action and generate many checks. Firstly, an action to infiltrate a location protected by guards could be resolved with a single position check made by the hunter leading the raid. As a general rule, before requesting a check, the storyteller must ask themselves the following question: does succeeding or failing the check have an interesting narrative outcome? If the answer is yes, then it's okay to call a check. Sounds like she's an ex. It's as bad as when my mother asked me how to unsubscribe from the UFO dating site. Oh no. What does that mean? NPCs are meant to assist, elevate, and shine a light on the player characters. I run a lot of NPCs in my games, and after plenty of intentional and direct conversations, they play a bit of a bigger role in the narration and ask from my players. even still, I'm so fucking intentional about non-player characters not become the protagonists. While they can have arcs and stories, the game as a whole is not their story. Totally agree, Alec. I think that like that's like another thing is like having that conversation with your players as well. And I think a lot of the hey San, how you doing? I think a lot of the issues that might erupt at a table can just be resolved by clear communication, and that definitely goes both ways. As a player, if you're having a problem with the way that the DM is like running a game, you should feel comfortable going to them and telling them that issue. If you don't feel comfortable, I think that you need to reevaluate the table that you're at, because I think if you're not comfortable going to your DM, I think you open yourself up to a lot of situations that are that can just be very uncomfortable. What are we doing? We are reading through the Broken Tales TTRPG. This is basically a dark fairy tale style TTRPG where you, the hunters, quote unquote, the hunters of the order, are former villains in fairy tales turned good guys because the heroes have turned to villains. You're having an intervention. Have a seat. Trust needs to be felt both ways. If you have no trust, mistreatment or worse is almost yes. I definitely have had I've definitely been at tables where I haven't felt comfortable speaking up to the DM. And this was when I was like I've only been in like the TTRPG space for almost 5 years now, but where I was fairly new to the space, and a lot of it was, well, I just figured that's how tables were run. Or maybe that's just how people like that's just how people acted in the TTRPG space. When in reality, it was definitely not the norm, and I definitely should have spoken up about it. Oh, hello, little baby. But you live and you learn, honestly. And I feel like at this point, if I'm ever invited to a table and I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking up to the DM about an issue I was having, and I kind of like asked myself that, I would definitely say no to sitting at that table. Sir, bite my feet. He's gonna bite my feet. I've been blessed with exclusively awesome groups so far. Hell yeah. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that's been your experience. All these 6 years I've been playing / DMing. I definitely, you know, there's been some growing pains. I've definitely had, I've had tables, like I've been a player at tables where the DM was just kind of nasty to the players, myself included. Or like if we tried to joke about something, they would like threaten to kill off our characters, which is like never a great feeling. Or just like otherwise like made decisions about like our characters that like they didn't really ask our permission to make those decisions. And like I'm someone who very much like I love my characters. I put a lot of myself into my characters, and I spend a lot of time making my characters. Even for like things like one shots, I spend a lot of time making characters. So it feels almost personal when like a DM is like, if you guys keep it up, rocks are gonna fall and kill all of your characters. This is why session zeros are so damn, yeah, agree. And like I mean, even back then, like I don't know, I feel like people like weren't really doing session zeros super often. Regardless of the fact that it was only like 4 years ago, like session zeros weren't super predominant. The consent checklists weren't super predominant. I feel like I definitely started seeing those crop up in the last like 2 years. And I love them. I'm super grateful for them because it definitely can help you sort of suss out tables that you definitely don't want to be a part of. Life is too short for BS. Yep. get them feet over. You know, he has a single paw on my foot, and it feels like a threat. At least they aren't threatening to kill players. I've heard that one before. Oh my god, Insomnia! Thank you so much for the biddies. Personally, I'm not attached to the character, but the story, I don't really mind losing my character if it makes sense, but that's just me. Oh no, see, I don't, I love angst. I love trauma. I love being traumatized by the DM, as long as I'm consenting to the trauma. Like I remember having a conversation with like Bleak about Cassie dying. And it was definitely like I made the decision for her to die, and I also made the decision for her to stay dead. Because he had been like, hey, if you want, like, we can figure out a way to bring her back. And I'm like, nope, I want her to stay dead. I think that it makes more sense for the story and it has more of an impact. That was a rough one. Me just sobbing the entire last episode. It's when a character, their themes and story is treated with blatant disrespect. That's where things become problematic. Yeah, definitely. Man, there's just like, and I think at the end of the day, like having those experiences, while I would never want to do them again, has also made me realize the type of tables that I want to give my time to, and the type of tables that I do not want to give my time to, and the type of DMs that I do not want to interact with. And I definitely have like people in the space that I do not want to play with. I feel like we will be experiencing trauma on Sunday. Yeah, but you signed up for the trauma. What I walk into? Hey, Calamity. Oh, we're just talking about like bad tables to sit at in TTRPGs. Speaking of, a storyteller's job is also to foster a safe and inclusive gaming environment. Role-playing is an activity that can easily expose delicate issues offending the sensibility of some players. Broken Tales is no exception, and the themes of the scenarios can be difficult to deal with for some people. Each scenario includes a series of keywords useful for getting a quick understanding of the situations that could arise during the game. In this way, the storyteller will be able to evaluate what to offer to the table and whether or not to list the keywords to the players. It must be noted that keywords might reveal characters and situations, spoiling some aspects of the plot. Another good way to handle difficult issues is to modify the scenario based on keywords. If the story includes the keyword sect and manipulation, the storyteller can modify those elements in the plot, transforming the members of the sect into something else. For example, a gang at the service of the villain. The best advice, however, remains to speak and listen to each player and be accommodating to their sensitivity. Often simply hinting at what happened in a given situation and not dwelling on the details is a good way to run the scenario as it's written without impacting the fun factor at the table. Finally, even if it may seem trivial, it is good to remember that Broken Tales is a dark horror game with a focus on distortion of traditional fairy tales, switching the roles of hero and villain. Approaching the game with appropriate expectations is essential to avoiding nasty surprises. After all, you wouldn't go to the movie theater to see a scary movie if you hated the horror genre, right? True. I feel like that's pretty key in, hey, this is a game, this is a horror-based game. It's going to leave, there's going to be situations that are going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be topics that are going to be uncomfortable. Of course, I wouldn't want to purposely make my players uncomfortable. However, if you come into like a horror game, especially if you know me, and you know that like I include a lot of body horror and gore in my horror games. Like I tend to describe those pretty vividly. If you come into the game and I've sort of told you and you know those types of games that I run, and then you ask that gore and body horror not be included, I'd be like, hey, maybe this isn't the table for you. We're very similar in that regard. A lot of built-in trauma. We'll have to chat with characters sometimes. I remember telling my partner about the last paladin I played, and she just looked at me concerned and uttered, "Honey, are you good?" Oh my god! Listen, I love a traumatized player. I love a player. I love a traumatized character. A player too. I'm the traumatized player. I think I don't know. I think because I tend to build my own trauma into my characters. Yeah, if you sign up for a horror game, hello. Tips for proper game management: establish the initial description of the scene, manage NPCs' agendas, ask questions, and build on the answers. Give every hunter a spotlight, interpret the rules and manage position checks, manage the results of the hunter's actions, stay anchored to the story as it's played and not to whatever you have prepared in advance. If necessary, pause the game and ask other players for assistance. Do not call position checks ahead of time, and don't make the hunters look incompetent. I like the Freudian slip. What's Freudian slip? Oh, traumatized player. The journey of building someone back up is so interesting to me in storytelling. Broken Tales really seems to highlight that. Yeah, traumatized player, that's me. Freudian slip. Yeah, I think so. I think that is... Because I'm not gonna lie, like when I had originally picked up the book, I was like, oh, Broken Tales, Dark Fairy Tale. Oh, so like we're playing like... I almost was thinking Perils and Princesses, but like a little more horror-based, where like you're playing as like the fairy tale princess that, you know, decided that she didn't want to be a damsel in distress anymore. But I like that they have it where you're playing the villain instead. And like, obviously we have to read a little bit more into the book and kind of see how you build out a character and stuff, but like, how do you take a villainous character and make them good? Because like it could be like one of two things. Like you could take the villainous character and sort of make them into like if you take Captain Hook, you can make him into a character that's more like Peter Pan. But I don't think that that would be quite the right way to do it. I think that you would have to look at Captain Hook as a character and see what changes actually need to be made to him as a character to make him into the quote unquote good guy. And also being the good guy is super like relative. Like it's like subjective. Like what makes a good guy and a villain a villain? Morality. Don't pressure yourself. Make fights dynamic. Join the dots. Dots? Darth Vader. Yeah. Super good villain. Their hat color. The creation process for Dark Presences follows the same pattern as that for Hunters. It requires you to push fairy tale character to their breaking point, then give it new life in the world of Broken Tales. Dark Presences are, for all intent and purposes, NPCs with a background connected to the original fairy tale, but aren't specific to a scenario. Within the world of Broken Europe, a dark presence can take on a life of its own. This makes them versatile figures, which the storyteller can drop in any scenario or campaign to assist or oppose the hunters. You know what this like low-key just reminded me of? It reminds me a little bit of Kingdom Hearts. Reminds me a little bit of Kingdom Hearts. Maybe I'm just like Disney pilled. I don't know. Just having it where like you have characters from other stories interacting. And then there's like, I don't know, I just thought of Hades. I thought of like Hades and Maleficent, like in cahoots. Goofy, the biggest villain of them all. Every dark presence must be born from a fairy tale. The starting point is deciding which fairy tale character to break in order to create their new version in the world of Broken Tales. Any source for the fairy tale will do, whether it's a book or just a website. Based on the original story, you have to decide what kind of dark presence you want to create. An opponent, an ally, or a neutral. So that's nice. I sort of thought that maybe Dark Presence was perhaps going to be like sort of like a big bad. But it is nice to see that you don't actually have to do that. You can have like a Dark Presence be an ally or just like a neutral person who just wants you to fuck off. Ooh. That's creepy. The Jar Jar of Disney. Well, technically Jar Jar is the Jar Jar of Disney. No? Have you read Comic Fables? I don't think I have. Step 1, bring the character to their breaking point. Underline and take notes on all of the interesting words or phrases in the original fairy tale. These will become the keywords. Keywords are narrative flags useful in detailing all aspects of a dark presence. For some words or phrases, the meaning of a keyword should be flipped. This step is necessary to reach the breaking point and transform the classic character into its distorted version. It's now time to detail a story and give a background to the dark presence. Step 2, assign the characteristics. We start by defining the dark presence's descriptor. A descriptor consists of a couple of sentences that must summarize what the dark presence does and what capabilities they have. As with the hunter's descriptor, the dark presence descriptor can have a downside. The descriptor must make it clear who the dark presence is in a few sentences. Fables is amazing. It's the comic The Wolf Among Us based on. Oh, okay. Very Fables coded. Oh, dope. I'm gonna look it up then. I trust your guys' suggestions. Finally, you decide on the opposition level. And then step 3, create gifts. Each dark presence must have at least 2 gifts that represent abilities, powers, or something special they can do. Keywords will be great help in staying consistent. The basic rule is to describe what happens during the narration when the dark presence uses their gift. And then step 4, the creepy guy. Agenda. The last step is to establish an agenda for the dark presence, which is a short sentence that describes a motivation for their actions. The agenda must be contextualized with the character's story or the scenario in which the dark presence will be used. If the dark presence comes from a fairy tale from which one of the hunters was drawn, it's possible to detail a special agenda representing some connection between the two. Ooh. Oh. I think these are some possible dark presences. So we have Ambrose the Sorcerer, known as Old Merlin, which is inspired by Merlin from the Arthurian myth. That's really dope. We have Frogface, which is inspired by the Frog Prince. God, oh my god, look at that. So fucking good. And Kiss in the Fog. Oh my god, this art, dude. That is so... Oh my god, I just love that. I love that so much. We have Hua Mulan, the sword demon, inspired by the legend of Hua Mulan. Oh, and it also gives you, like, if they're going to be, like, an opponent or neutral. God, the art is so good. The Periwinkle Pier, inspired by Prince Charming. And then it gives you sort of like a description of everything. The Ancient Enemy, inspired by the dragon. You see a little dragon right there? The Wild Swans Gang. Oh, you guys know I love swans. Inspired by the Wild Swans. The Silent, inspired by the Little Mermaid. Ooh. Oh my god, look at that art, dude. That's like, I don't know, it's just so beautiful. I love like the, just like the textures. I know you can't really see like so much, but like the different textures in there. It's, oh my, it fucks so hard. The Wise Fox, inspired by the Golden Bird. Look at the little fox, dude. The Fire Eater, inspired by... Fire Eater the Puppeteer, inspired by Pinocchio. The Masked Swashbuckler, inspired by Puss in Boots. Like, oh my, look at the cats. Meow meow. Orcus the Guardian, inspired by the Evil Orc. He's an ally. He's a good guy. Goldilocks and her War Bears, inspired by Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I think I do like that they're kind of taking like Goldilocks is obviously like the hero. So like in a world where you have the heroes of fairy tales becoming villains, of taking those and making them opponents for your characters to go up against. Sinbad the Traveler of 1,000 Seas, inspired by Sinbad from 1001 Nights. I love these. So good. Alfred Leaves the Talking Ghost, inspired by Pinocchio's Jiminy Cricket. Wood. Oakheart, the Lady of the Woods, inspired by I'm definitely gonna pronounce it, but Bondewed? Again, God, I want to play a character like that. The Feral Musicians of Bremen, inspired by the Bremen Town Musicians. I like that house too. The Returning Wolf, inspired by the Big Bad Wolf. The King's Unlikely Tailor, inspired by the Emperor's New Clothes. The Mothers of Fate, inspired by the fairy godmothers of many fairy tales. And then I think that's where we'll leave off. Next week, Christmas is on a Wednesday, right? So I think Thursday we should be good. Next week we'll kind of go over the hunter creation. I think a lot of the rest of the book is actually like the various scenarios. But next week we'll go over the hunter's creation and probably check out the Alice in Wonderland scenario in specifics, because that is the one that I am kind of most looking forward to reading. Man, I definitely want to run this at some point. I think I would need a very specific table to do so. But it seems like a really good time. I really love, man, the art. The art is so fucking good. I think that the system's pretty swell. I feel like the system is, as someone who is sort of making the transition from not playing a lot of D&D, definitely would take a little bit getting used to, but I think that with the right group, and especially with like people who are very open to like doing improv and have pretty good narrative skills, I think it would be a really fun game to run. But we are going to go raid over into we're gonna go raid over into Hampod. My good friend Rain, they are putting on a Brindlewood Bay game right now that is Christmas themed. So we're gonna go raid over into Hampod. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I will be live. Next time I'll be live is going to be Saturday morning. We'll be playing some more Mass Effect. So if you guys want to see me do my Mass Effect Paragon run for the very first time, come hang out with us. 10 a.m. Pacific, Saturday. I'm having a hard time not being a dickhead in that game. So, c'est la vie, I guess. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chilling with me. Thank you for the biddies and the gift subs, Lumix. I appreciate that so much. I'm such a renegade. I'm a renegade. By heart. I'm gonna go play some Marvel Rivals now, guys. I don't have a problem. You have a problem.